Before Pablo, before Escobar ruled Miami, there was her. They called her the Black Widow, the godmother, la madrina. She didn't just sell cocaine, she redesigned murder. Entire families vanished, rivals were erased, children grew up without fathers, because she said so. Her empire flooded Miami with billions. Her orders traveled faster than fear. And if you crossed her, you didn't get a warning. You got a motorcycle. But here's what most people don't know. Her first kill wasn't in Miami. It wasn't in Medellín. It happened when she was 11 years old. And that was only the beginning. Due to the graphic nature of this woman's crimes, listener discretion is advised. This episode includes discussions of murder, abuse, and assault that some people may find disturbing. We advise extreme caution for children under the age of 13. It was the mid-1970s in Medellín, Colombia. A young, ambitious car thief had been begging a smuggler he knew for a crucial introduction. He wanted to meet the biggest cocaine distributor in the city. Finally, the smuggler agreed to bring him to a cockfight later that week. The kid, with the brash confidence of youth, was certain he could convince her to take him on. At the venue, he pushed through the rowdy crowd, eager to find her. As he got closer to the center ring, the spectators became wealthier, more dangerous. And then he spotted her. She was around 30 years old, a striking figure draped in diamonds and silk, completely surrounded by a thick wall of bodyguards. The young man noticed the pistol she carried with ease, never bothering to hide it. He tried to push forward, to explain that the smuggler had vouched for him, that he was meant to meet her. The bodyguards weren't listening. But then she spoke. She had heard him drop the smuggler's name and realized this was the meeting she had agreed to. The car thief knew this was his one shot. Getting in with her would be his ticket to the top. He introduced himself. Pablo Escobar. She acknowledged him with a nod, filing the name away for later. And then she introduced herself, as if he couldn't possibly know who he was looking at. Griselda Blanco. Today, we are telling the story of Griselda Blanco, the godmother of Colombian cocaine. She was one of the very first major players in the lucrative and lethal drug trade of the 1970s. The devastation she left behind was immense, a trail of brutal murders and countless drug overdoses. Griselda Blanco was born in Cartagena, Colombia, on February 15, 1943. Her mother, Ana Lucia Restrepo, was a farm worker. The identity of her father is uncertain. Some sources name a Fernando Blanco, while a biographer suggests it was a taxi driver named Luis Carlos Blanco, who may have been her stepfather. The family didn't stay in Cartagena. By the time Griselda was 3, in 1946, they had moved to Medellín, settling in the poor, overcrowded Barrio Trinidad, a neighborhood teeming with migrant workers and, notably, a high concentration of brothels. When Griselda was just 5 years old, Colombia erupted. The assassination of a prominent political leader in 1948 sparked a decade-long civil war known as La Violencia. The country was torn apart as political factions raised paramilitary armies. Colombia was left in ruins, with hundreds of thousands killed and millions displaced. The majority of Griselda's formative years, from age 5 to 15, were lived in a war-torn nation where violence was the new normal. Now, a note on psychology. While I am not a licensed professional, research shows that children who grow up in war zones are deeply affected. They are forced to make life or death decisions and endure trauma comparable to combat soldiers. Child psychologists studying this phenomenon warn that this violence is all some children know. The great danger is that they will internalize this violence and then reproduce it later in life. Some, like Griselda, didn't wait to grow up. In 1951, Griselda's neighborhood was officially designated Medellin's red light district, concentrating crime in one area. It was here that Griselda began her life of crime, pickpocketing and forming a small gang of young thieves, where she was the undisputed leader. But pickpocketing wasn't enough. Around 1954, when she was only 11 years old, Griselda orchestrated a kidnapping. Her gang snatched a 10-year-old boy from a wealthier part of town. They held him for ransom in the hills, but his parents refused to pay, perhaps not believing the threat was real. They were wrong. When Griselda learned the ransom wasn't coming, she didn't hesitate. She pulled out a gun and shot the young boy dead. This was her first murder. She was 11 years old. This happened astoundingly early in her life. While it was intended as a kidnapping, it ended in murder by her own hand. The fact that she was willing to pull the trigger herself speaks volumes. Perhaps she did it to maintain her status and save face in front of her gang. Or maybe it was a brutal demonstration of her leadership, a warning to anyone who might doubt how far she was willing to go. Not long after the murder, it's believed Griselda may have entered the world of sex work, something she denied her entire life, though many sources point to it. It was likely through this work that she met her first husband, a forger and smuggler named Carlos Trujillo, who was known for fabricating immigration papers. To a young girl trapped in poverty and crime, he may have represented a way out. Around 1957, at the age of 14, Griselda ran away from home. Some reports suggest it was due to sexual abuse by one of her mother's boyfriends. She may have left for the relative safety of a life with Trujillo. They eventually married and had 3 sons over the course of the 1960s: Dixon, Uber, and Oswaldo. While raising her children, Griselda helped Trujillo expand his forgery and smuggling operation. Their marriage ended in the late 1960s, either by divorce or separation, which was not legal in Colombia at the time. Trujillo died in 1970, officially from hepatitis, though rumors persist that Griselda had him killed. If she did have him killed, it may have been to clear a path to his friend, Alberto Bravo. Bravo and his brother were involved in a new, lucrative venture: converting old factories into labs for processing cocaine. Cocaine, a chemical compound from the coca plant, had been used for centuries but was isolated in the 19th century. By the 1970s, after decades of looser regulations, the United States had made it completely illegal. At that time, U.S. authorities were more focused on heroin, and Colombia's illegal trade was centered on marijuana. This left a massive opening for someone like Alberto Bravo to supply a hungry American market. In 1970, with what was likely a loan from Bravo, Griselda and a friend flew to Bolivia with $500. They bought unrefined cocaine and smuggled it back to Colombia for Bravo to process. It was an incredible risk for a mother of 3, but with her first husband dead, she was the sole provider. Her options were likely limited, and the dangers of this new path may have seemed preferable to the known risks of sex work. This was the first of many trips. On her second run alone, she flew out with $5,000 and returned with 10 times as much product. Griselda was quickly becoming a partner, not a subordinate. By 1971, she and Bravo were not only business partners, but also married. With his wealth and her ambition, they began expanding his operation into the United States, possibly becoming the first to export Colombian cocaine to New York. Their operation relied on drug mules flying from Medellín to New York with drugs and returning with cash. Griselda's innovation was to primarily hire women and children as mules. She understood they were overlooked by both police and rival traffickers. She and Bravo even set up a lingerie shop in Queens as a front, using tailors to create custom garments for smuggling: wigs, girdles, bras with secret compartments. One infamous cocaine corset, abandoned in a Miami airport bathroom, contained nearly 7 pounds of the drug, sewn into 58 separate compartments, with fake breasts filled with packets of coke. The loyalty of her mules was astounding. When one was caught with over 4 pounds of cocaine in her underwear, she refused to reveal her boss, even when facing a Colombian prison sentence. These women, and the many others who worked for her, began calling her La Madrina, the godmother. By 1972, their distribution network spanned 4 New York City boroughs. They had corrupt officials, money launderers, and full-time forgers on the payroll. Griselda also established a stranglehold on the Medellín airport, paying off employees to ensure her mules had safe passage and to choke off her competition. At this point, it's estimated they were moving about $1 million worth of cocaine every 6 months. Their operation continued to grow until 1973, when the United States formed the DEA to crack down on drug imports. The agency's first major cocaine case was Griselda and Bravo's operation, which they called Operation Banshee due to the high number of women involved. By late 1973, the operation had outgrown individual mules, moving boatloads of cocaine with the help of female pilots and even frogmen swimming contraband ashore. Federal agents issued arrest warrants in late 1974, arresting over 150 people connected to the cartel. Griselda and Bravo fled to Medellín in early 1975, just ahead of a federal indictment. Back in Medellín, Griselda still controlled production and shipping. It was around this time she was introduced to that young car thief, Pablo Escobar. 7 years her junior, Pablo had a background in kidnapping, car theft, and bodyguarding. He wanted in on the cocaine business and knew Griselda was the gatekeeper. He got his meeting at the cockfight. We don't know what was said, but Griselda took a chance on him, providing the cash for his first cocaine purchase. Pablo's operation, which would later become the infamous Medellín cartel, started as just one offshoot of Griselda's larger enterprise. But the partnership soured quickly. They grew to resent each other's success. Pablo didn't want to work for a woman, a dynamic some men see as a threat to their masculinity. Griselda, in turn, saw his rapid rise as a threat to her position. She once lured him to a meeting that was clearly a setup. Pablo barely escaped with his life, and from that point on, they were locked in a bloody war, each trying to have the other assassinated. This war with Escobar may have inspired Griselda to pioneer a new method of execution. Traditional mafia hits involved a car pulling up next to a target, a shootout, and a getaway, a plan easily foiled by traffic. Griselda's solution was the motorcycle. A driver and a hitman could weave through any traffic jam and disappear in seconds. This method would define the drug wars for decades. But in 1975, Escobar's men gained the upper hand, forcing Griselda and Alberto Bravo to flee Medellín for the relative safety of Bogotá. Being driven from her home turf was devastating. It likely intensified her paranoia. She had Bravo's brother killed, suspecting him of working with Escobar. This did not improve her relationship with her husband. The marriage was strained. It's believed Bravo began skimming millions from their shared profits. He also allegedly thought Griselda was taking her godmother persona too far. Later that year, the tension came to a head. Officially, no one saw what happened, but the rumor is that Griselda and Bravo met in a nightclub parking lot. She accused him of stealing. He called her arrogant. The argument ended in a shootout between them and their respective bodyguards. The rumor claims Griselda fired first with a pistol. Bravo responded with a submachine gun. When the gunfire ceased, Bravo and his men lay dead. Griselda denied it, but her autopsy would later reveal an old bullet wound in her abdomen, possibly from Bravo's gun that night. Regardless of the truth, the story gave her a new nickname, the Black Widow. Griselda Blanco's story is far from over. Next time, we will discuss her third marriage, her bloody and brutal takeover of the Miami cocaine scene, her arrest during the Miami drug wars, and her own ironic death by motorcycle. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the life of Griselda Blanco, the Black Widow of the cocaine trade. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more stories about the world's most notorious figures, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Tap the button below and make sure you click the bell icon to turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss our next episode. We want to hear from you. Which crime lord or criminal mastermind should we cover next? Let us know in the comments section below. Your suggestions often become our next episodes. If you found this story fascinating, go ahead and share this video with a friend who loves true crime. And we'll see you in the next one.